Welcome back. So today is my pleasure to introduce our chairman, Bernie Ripoll. Welcome, Bernie. Great to have you here.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks, Gary.
So, Bernie, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so look, my name's Bernie Ripoll. I'm a former Member of Parliament. I spent 18 years in Canberra representing the good people of Oxley in Queensland, which was a great privilege and a great honour. And I did lots of different things while I was an MP. Two things that really stood out for me. One was in the world of financial services, and some people may be familiar with some of the work that I did, and I continue to do some of that work in the reform area of financial services. But the other great thing that a lot of MPs do and senators do, and that people may not know, and something I enjoyed a lot, was actually just doing community work and charitable work. And I spent many years doing that. And in fact, Gary, I set up a couple of my own charitable ventures, and really just to help the community and fill in the gaps where I saw need. And hopefully I can continue to do that later in life.
Yeah, fantastic, Bernie. It's wonderful to have you as our chairman, and obviously we're very proud of that. And I think we've got some really exciting stuff ahead. So I know we chatted offline about the three sort of key areas but why are you involved?
Well, like a lot of things in life, it's timing. And I think when we first had some early conversations around, this new venture around philanthropy, it really excited me. As I said earlier, I have done a lot of work in the charitable sector and with community, and I felt a really a good contribution when I was involved. You give a lot, but you get a lot back. And now being out in the private sector and sort of looking after myself in a lot of different ways, that was a missing piece for me. And so the timing was just right. Yeah. I really felt like I wanted to and needed to get back to doing, something for other people. Yeah. And for me, that what you presented in terms of the idea around this new model really excited me, and it's bigger than just a single piece of work. I think this is something that we can do to contribute to a whole heap of charities and not-for-profits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's incumbent on all of us to, make a difference, isn't it? And I know we're reliant on that very much. So we spoke about the culture and the sort of need to change the culture.
Yep.
Would you mind elaborating how you see that?
Sure. Well, I think for anyone who's involved in the charitable sector and not-for-profit sector, it's large, it's huge in Australia, more than 60,000 registered charities in Australia, which is a very big number.
Massive.
But I think one of the key features is that not much has changed in a very long time. And while it's a really great culture, it's not as good as it could be in terms of the culture of giving. And I think that's something that really can change and needs to change. And I know a lot of people will know that the federal government is committed to that, and there's a federal government program, a policy at the moment, which I know is supported by everyone in the parliament, non-partisan, is to double giving by 2030. So the federal government's gone out and asked the sector really, what can we do better, or what can the parliament do better to actually double giving by 2030? So I think it's a huge challenge, but that really opens up the door to have this conversation around what can we do differently to what's currently being done and change that culture.
Yeah, I think that's really the exciting part, I think, from our perspective, and having come into philanthropy, I guess, fairly late from my side. I think just, new models that we're trying to introduce to create the sustainability, and you see that has really been, important, I suppose, to changing the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit it right on the head with the new models. I think, again, a characteristic of our very good charitable not-for-profit sector is the great work they do in community, but not much has changed. And there hasn't been a new model in terms of how to do that. Yeah. So typically what happens today, and again, great work, whether it's a sausage sizzle, whether it's volunteers giving of their time, which is so important, or whether it's just donations from people every year or every month, or the one-off. But that's it. The innovation sort of stops there. And, I know that a lot of groups are using technology and they're using things, but they're using that to enhance what they're currently doing. So it's still being applied to the old model rather than there being new models. And I think part of what we're talking about is there a better way can we bring to the sector
Yeah.
what's been done for a long time in financial services,
Yeah.
which is to find really great ways to leverage and multiply either your equity or your assets or the fact of giving to actually end up with more at the other end.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important, and that's what this conversation's about.
Yeah, very exciting. I guess just that emphasis and focus on, what's better for the donors, how to make it easier to give more. Certainly we have the capacity as a country to give a lot more and basically just to find better ways. And then I guess the third element to that is the education piece. And we all know that potentially they're the gatekeepers for more money. And how do you see that part of it?
Yeah, so education, like all things in life, is a really important part. And I think in this sector, there's been a real lack of either a standard or an education platform in philanthropy and giving, or even accredited courses, particularly for advisors and accountants and auditors and others that could be more involved in the sector. There's no real benchmark in Australia as yet, and I think that's a really big opportunity for the financial services sector to step up a level for financial advisors and others and accountants who look after, in some cases, family offices or people's wealth, where we know they want to give and they would give more if they were more educated around how to do it, what the benefits are for them as donors, and what the benefits are for them in terms of just giving and contributing to community. So I think that opportunity is massive. It's almost unexplored. I wouldn't say completely, but I think there's a huge opening here for anyone that wants to get involved in that part of it.
Yeah, very exciting. As you know, we've got some models planned around the education piece, and we've managed to attract, I guess, some of the leading people in Australia around education. Yep. And we're hoping to launch that early next year, as you know. So very exciting times. Would you mind just finally perhaps talking about, government's role in the future of philanthropy? You've touched on the double giving bit, but I guess there's still an enthusiasm and a definite need and a desperate need, I guess, to just have an ever-increasing amount of money going to social welfare, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's one of the great features, I think, of the Australian community and society is we actually have a government that does fund critical programs, be they in health or disability or community. So there's a great element to what government and governments do already, but clearly there's a big gap. There always is. And that gap is filled by the private sector. It's filled by not-for-profits. It's filled by the charities, the big names that we already know, and lots of smaller names that people may not be aware of. But I think government can play a huge role. There's no question the government can create the sort of regulatory frameworks around people being able to give more easily and give more, and also for donors and for the charitable sector to work and be a part of that ecosystem. We already saw through the ACNC, the Australian Charitable Not-for-Profit Commission, in terms of trying to better regulate and make sure there's transparency in what happens in that sector. And I think something that is certainly on the table for everyone to think about is when you have more than 60,000 registered charities and it's a huge number for technically a small country like Australia. There's a lot of duplication. And with duplication comes inefficiency. So I think government can play a role in, helping to consolidate the sector. I think that's a really good conversation to have. Acknowledging the great contribution that's being done by individuals, right from the smallest charity, which is a single person wanting to bring about more awareness in a particular area, to the really large organisations that overlap quite a bit. And some of that consolidation is already happening. It's happening.
It is.
Through natural course of events where groups get together and say, well, we would do more if we just contributed together. So I think there's so much in this space. I think philanthropy is still a new concept in Australia. It's much more developed and advanced, for example, in the United States and other countries. Australia, I think, has got the right cultural base. But I think what our role is and what we're embarking on, part of our mission is to be able to bring some new ideas, some new models, and really start the conversation in different areas, from the large not-for-profits and charities to small and medium, and provide them an opportunity. And And particularly as we've talked about for donors, so they can give more, be more generous. We know they want to be, but show them how they can be more generous.
Yeah, absolutely. Bernie, thanks so much for joining us today. Really exciting space, and there's so much more to chat about, but thank you for your time. It's great to see you.
Gary, absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Bernie.